The Brand Ed Podcast with Robbie Fowler, Episode 20, entitled The 3 Key Steps to Building an Audience and Growing Your Business. Welcome to the Brand Ed Podcast with Robbie Fowler, the show that helps you build a life-giving personal brand and business. I believe the chaos and confusion around branding, marketing, and business strategy leads to burnt-out leaders, underperforming businesses, and life-draining brands. The best way forward is to connect your branding, marketing, and business strategy together so you can become a better leader, build a stronger business, and bless the customers you serve. Welcome to this episode of the Brand Ed Podcast. I'm excited today because we're going to get to hang out with my good friend and excellent brand strategist, Sean Pritzkau. Sean and I met each other a while back, and I've been fortunate enough to work on several projects with him. And before we jump in, let me ask you a quick question. How do you start and build an audience around your business? It sounds simple, whether you are thinking about starting a business or whether you're several years in. That's always a challenge, is just to get our hands around what does it look like to build an audience around my business. Where am I? What do I need to do next? What are the right steps? And that's what we're going to look at today with my good friend, Sean Pritzkau. So I hope you enjoy this interview. We're going to jump in right now. You're going to get a great kind of metaphor or analogy that I really think you're going to be able to carry with you, and it's going to make a ton of sense to go, oh, that's how I do it. And it's going to help you know where you are and where you need to go in that process of building an audience around your business so that your business grows. So let's dive in with my good friend, Sean Pritzkau. Well, we welcome to the podcast my good friend, the fantastic last name, Sean Pritzkau, is how normal people say it. That's not how I say it. It's Sean Pritzkau, right? And there's always some sort of like spark dynamite emoji that goes with that when I say it or text it, even in my mind. So Sean, welcome to the Brand Ed Podcast. Glad to have you here with us. And you are coming from a lovely, sunny, where in the United States of America?
Don't usually hear sunny. We hear snowy, but I'm in upstate New York. So Rochester, closer to Toronto, probably an hour and a half, from Buffalo, New York. Okay.
So I say that because we happen to be doing a Zoom call as we record this, and I see the sunlight just spilling in to your workspace there, or it could be a fake light off to the side. Either way, we're going to go with the beautiful, beautiful sunlight. So I met Sean 2.5-ish or so years ago through a mastermind, which is crazy. And we hit it off. We've been good friends since then. The North and the South unite, Arkansas and Rochester, getting together.
So get the Rot in there.
Got to get the Rochester. So introduce yourself to the audience listening in. So clearly on this podcast, you probably have something to do with having a personal brand, something around branding or marketing. So tell us just a little bit about what you do in beautiful Rochester. And then maybe I'll circle back around and say, well, how did you get to where you started doing that? So tell us a little bit about you, your business, and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. I'm excited to be on your show today. And I can't believe it's been 2-3 years since we met. It's unreal. Yeah, so I'm a marketing consultant. I work in marketing and branding. I work primarily with cause-driven organizations, social impact brands, nonprofit organizations, but have been able to do a ton of work with various kinds of businesses and brands. So I'm up here. I have a small team that works on projects with me. I've been able to collaborate with some fantastic people, one of them being Robbie Fowler himself.
Whoa.
And so that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So as you'll hear this, and it'll probably come up, Sean and I end up doing several of the same kinds of things. Therefore, we're frequently talking about all of the wonderful things about that and the challenges. And we'll get to some of those questions when we get to the end and we peel back the curtain on some challenges that go along with this. But as we get started on this, okay, so I'm listening, I'm following along with the podcast so Sean does marketing, he does branding, he works with these causes and organizations. I'm thinking about starting one of those. I'm thinking about starting my own business, or I've got this little side hustle. I'm trying to figure out, what does it look like to take it to the next level? So how do you help people when they come to you? Because I know you get all the time, right? And they've got the idea, they've taken a few steps, and they're kind of frustrated because it didn't get the traction they were kind of hoping to get. How do you help those folks when they reach out to you and say, hey, Sean, maybe you can help me. I've got this fill in blank idea, business, whatever. Where do you normally start when those questions come to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Robbie, like you mentioned, I know we have a lot of shared interests and even a lot of a shared backstory, and all of my, experience in my professional experience, has been, I've been able to work with a lot of nonprofit organizations. I hailed back from the ministry world, where I worked in church for a long time. So my kind of experience in both marketing and branding, and my experience working with churches and organizations collided at some point. And that's kind of why I find myself loving to work with people that have some of the greatest ideas, have some of the greatest things that are kind of encouraging the work that they do. And as you and I both know, sometimes the people with the greatest ideas don't have they might not have the experience, right? In business or marketing or branding. They just have an idea and they can't shake the idea, right? And they know it's something that they want to push forward. So that's kind of the group that I get to work with every day, is people that want to make some sort of impact in the world, but might not know how to do it, might not have the tools that they need to actually build a brand that's going to make that impact. So a lot of people I work with tend to be starting from scratch, right? They have an idea and they're looking to really learn how to wrap this idea with legs and put that thing into motion. So yeah, like you asked, like, where do I start? Like you mentioned, I live in Rochester, New York. We are just in a couple hours from the Adirondacks, just like most gorgeous region. And we're super fortunate. So every few weeks, my wife and I, some friends, pack into our Honda Pilot and travel up north. And we spend a lot of time camping. And if you have ever been on a camping trip, maybe you are a novice or you are an experienced backpacker, you may have seen someone build a fire. And I grew up as a Boy Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I tend to be the person who always makes the fire.
And I can attest to this because the first time we hung out in person, do you remember now? Did you remember?
We built a campfire together.
We built a campfire, and there's 7, 8, 9, 10 of us around. This was our first meetup of our mastermind. So we'd met each other kind of on Zoom, right? And we're all, hey, let's go outside. We were in Nashville at the time. It was beautiful, I guess fall-ish weather. Hey, let's build a campfire. So who do you think did the campfire, Sean? Sean.
That is amazing, because I totally didn't make that connection.
Oh, I totally
did. And I bet because I probably stepped in to make it because someone was making the most shameful representation of a fire.
Wrong, right? Yeah.
Well, that's perfect that you mentioned that, because if you've been on the one side of that, where you've seen someone try to make a fire and it might look really pretty for 35 seconds and then it goes and everyone's freezing cold around the campfire. There's a right way to make a fire, and there's a wrong way to make a fire. And a lot of us, when we try to make a fire, we get the largest the largest pieces of wood that we can find and stack them together in some sort of teepee or log cabin sort of format. And we light the match, or we light the lighter, and we kind of hope and pray that this thing is going to start. And honestly, I see, a lot of people do that when they're starting out with their business or their brand. They spend hours and hours into their DIY first website, and they might not know how to build a website. They might not know how to build a brand, but they know that I'm going to start a business. I'm going to have this website, right? Or maybe they might reach out and find a designer to, design the sexiest brand that they have ever seen, and compare it to their favorite brand, right? And so people invest significant money and energy and time into building a brand and a business. And, when they flip the lights on that new website, or they start the key, the ignition, right? And it's just crickets, right? They don't, they've built maybe the most gorgeous website, right? But they don't see any real results come from their time and their investment. So I would suggest that that's the wrong way to build the business, just like it'd be the wrong way to build the fire, to get the logs all ready and just kind of hope and pray that it's going to start. The right way to build a fire, if you ever been on a camping trip, you're going to go around your campfire and try to find some twigs, some branches, some little stuff, some things that are going to kind of easily engage on fire. Right. And that is going to be the best way to start your fire, is to get an initial spark to light. And I would suggest that is, we're starting a business or a brand. You have an idea. The best thing that you can do is reach around, look around and say, who are the people that are around me, around this circle, that can help me get this fire started. And that is going to be your kindling for your business, right? You might have 5 to 10 folks that are interested in what you do. They're interested in the problem that you're trying to solve. They are just interested, right? And this might be your mom. This might be your siblings. This could be your neighbor. No shame. Some vested interest in keeping that relationship with you, but I'm sure if you're as passionate about something, the idea or the business idea that you have, then you likely have people around you that also care. So that's the thing. That's where I encourage people to get started, is to start. Excuse me. That's where I encourage people to get started, is to get that initial spark lit. And that only comes from looking around and seeing, what do I have right around me that I can use to get this spark to start? Yeah. And Robbie, like you mentioned, we met in a mastermind group. I remember 2.5 years ago, we were on a call and we all sat down and we wrote down, who are the 5-10 people I know that would give me their attention once a week if I was to send an email to them, something that was relevant to this problem, this thing that I'm working on. And I remember sitting down and writing down my first 10, 15 people, right? I remember every single person said yes. Yeah. And I went from having 0 one day to having 15 people the next day. Yeah. So, I mean, if I know you have a diverse audience here, but many of you could be starting out in the personal brand journey. And this is something that you can do today to kind of get your flame started, right? To start the spark, is just write down, hey, what are 10 people in my life? What's their name? And simply just reaching out and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm working on. And would you be interested if I shared something with you about that? Okay. So that sounds remarkably doable. Sounds a little less expensive than the big website attempt. Whether you hire somebody, you go out and trying to figure out what platform the website builder. And I mean, it is crazy where some of us think we have to go to just get this thing off the ground. We've not, like you said, we've not put this small little kindling in place, tried to light that on fire a little bit and say, look, if I can't get these twigs going, probably don't need to drag that ginormous pine tree over here and assume that it's gonna catch on fire. So I love that. I think that's a great picture. Hopefully you're following along. Like, start with a spark. Start with something small that just
involves probably people you already know, and just saying, hey, would you be willing to, would you be interested in this problem I'm trying to solve, this, whatever it is that your idea is built around. You're just starting with some people you know and trying to kind of get that spark going. Okay, so I've done that. I got 10 people. I've got 20 people, whatever it is, gathered around this idea. Okay, so what do I do next if I'm tracking with this? So some folks may be listening and they say, well, I've kind of already got that. I've got a small audience, around this idea. So for those folks, or for the person that's like, okay, if I did that, then what's next, Sean? Where do you help those folks that say, okay, I'm ready to kind of take this thing to the next level? What does that look like? Because again, we're all still waiting, like, what about that website and the logo and all the stuff you mentioned? Like, is this when? So where do you take people next?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about having that spark lit is now you've essentially kind of validated, at least with a small group right around you, this idea that you have, and it's almost giving you like the thumbs up, like keep going, like try this thing out, without the cost of that expensive website or honestly all the distractions that come along with starting a business or a brand. So what's next? Well, now if we're going to follow this analogy along, once we have the spark, we need to have the rest of the fire built. We need to build the fire. And I know that there is 3 different kinds of fires that we can build. And that's where I encourage people to really lean in and say, well, what kind of fire am I trying to build? We're recording this podcast. It's the end of September. Literally just about 12 months ago, I purchased my first home, and I walked into the living room, and there's this it's an old house, 1940 or something, hasn't been touched in quite some time. Talking about DIYing websites, I am DIYing a house renovation right now. And I walk in the living room, and there is this huge wood stove protruding from the fireplace. And for a very long time, I'm assuming roughly 80 years, because the house is pretty old, that this wood fire oven was this wood fire stove was the heating source for this house. Wow. We just moved over from a big oil tank in our backyard that was heating the home and stuff. Before this, there was a wood stove in the living room that was providing heat for the house, right? And there's a little fire in there. There's a spark, and there's a fire that's been built to keep this house warm. So that's one kind of fire, right? The second kind of fire is what we've been really talking about, is a campfire. There's people sitting around this fire, and it's providing some warmth, but we're not relying on this campfire for warmth, right? It's essentially something for us to sit around, where we can sit around the campfire, sing Kumbaya, enjoy conversation. Some of the most meaningful moments of my life have been around campfire, right? Or the third kind of fire is a signal fire, right? I'm imagining Castaway, if you remember Tom Hanks running around this thing. I have built fire. Oh yeah. Cue the actual audio from the movie right there. And I'm seeing him, and he's building this giant giant fire because he needs someone to notice him so he can be rescued, right? A third kind of fire, it's much different than your wood stove. It may be keeping you warm, and it might be essential, but the main reason is to signal that there is something that needs attention right here. 3 very different kinds of fire. And I have found this extremely helpful when I've shared this with some other folks, some clients that I've worked with, is, in this step, if we're identifying what kind of fire are we building, if we're building an audience, what kind of audience are we building? There's crowds all around the world. But what kind of crowd is this one? So let's say you are around that wood stove, right? That fire provides for a need. Our house needs warmth. We want to be able to sleep at night without freezing to death. We want I want my spouse to be happy. This house needs to be warmed, right?
Yep.
So, does your business or does your brand, does it provide for a need, right? Are you providing a service to your community? If you are building a campfire, right, and you have all these folks around this campfire, well, that fire is creating a community around an idea. You see a lot of people in the coaching space, they're creating this circle around them, and they're focusing on inspiring them, teaching them, helping them overcome obstacles, and not just connect people with themselves, but also connect people with other people, right? With shared interests and common problems and struggles. So you might be listening to this and you're saying, that's the kind of business I'm building. I'm not necessarily providing a service. Like I'm providing relationships. Like I am introducing people to one another, and that's the value that I bring. Or this third kind of fire, this bringing attention to a problem. This is where a lot of people that I talk to in the nonprofit world sit, is they're not necessarily providing a service, a direct to consumer, they're not providing lunch for folks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not, providing clothing. People aren't going to the e-commerce store, right? And they're not, creating community around something. They're saying there's a giant problem that no one is paying attention to. And people need to be focusing on this thing, or we're going to be in a problem, right?
Right.
There's people that desperately need your attention, your support, your help. This is Tom Hanks' kind of business, right? They're saying, we need to pay attention around this idea, and you want that fire to go higher and higher and higher, so more people see that problem. So at this stage, you're really saying, hey, I have the spark lit, and I have people that are, I have maybe gathered, and they've said, Sean, Robbie, talk to me. I'm interested in what you're doing. Now at this stage, you're saying, well, what kind of audience am I building? Like foundationally, what kind of audience am I building? Am I providing a service to people? Am I providing a circle of community that we can support one another and work through issues and challenges? Or am I saying, what is how can I get more and more people to understand that there's a problem that we need to talk about and help find a solution for? And lastly, to build upon this, you could be in a complex business. You could be in one, two, or even all three of these categories. And that's where some of the most successful brands live into this intersection of, hey, we provide a service, but we're also providing community around the service that we provide. But hey, we want to actually generate some awareness around a problem that our business, that's foundational to our business, because we have character and we have values that uphold our business, and we can't run this business without saying, hey, we need to also pay attention to this problem.
Right. Oh, okay. Super, super helpful to know those three. And, hopefully, pardon the pun, but sparks are flying as you listen to that and go, wow, yeah, I see how, maybe we should be thinking in terms of those, two of those three kinds of fires. Like, yeah, we have a product or service, but we want to serve customers, bring them together, help them rally around, like if you're a fitness brand, right? So we provide whatever, running shoes or whatever, but we're providing community and rallying around, a healthy lifestyle or active lifestyle, and we want folks to be in community together so they go do that more, not just wear our shoes or whatever. So really, really helpful. And yeah, you can imagine if you, without manufacturing it or making it fake, if you can get and think in terms of more than one of those fires, all the better to say we can go warm up inside around the product or service fire, right? But we can also have a great time and circle up around the campfire. And then, like you said, some really strong brands even say, yeah, and now that we're all together, we could go tackle this really important issue together. Okay, so we've started a fire. We have a little spark going. That was that first step. Let's just kind of gather some people around this, validate this. Surprisingly, we can do that with very little, money invested to kind of try it out. Now we're at this stage where we're building the fire. You still haven't said anything, Sean, about my really cool logo or my ginormous website. that I need. So where do we go from here, and where would those things fit in? Are you telling me I don't need a website? Do I never need, a logo or a brand? Where do you put those things? Where do I go if I can kind of get one or two of these fires started now?
Yeah. So if you've been a listener of this podcast like I have, I know you've probably followed Robbie through this series of events that helps you build your own personal brand business. So there's a benefit into the sequence events of starting to do some things and allowing your brand to kind of build upon a foundation. So now that you've started started the spark, like you've said, and you've built the fire, this is where I would say, once we've identified the people that we are trying to impact and what we provide to them, you really want to build your why statement. And this is where I kind of guide people in saying, if you can't say what you do in a sentence, then that's going to be really challenging, both in your one-on-one conversations where you meet people, but also on your website, right?
Yeah.
We're going to go build this thing and I don't know what to say on it. I'm in trouble.
Right.
So at this stage, you can really, build your why statement. This is essentially saying, I help blank, right? That group or the audience I'm trying to serve with blank, right? What is that foundational thing that you provide the service, whether it's a service, whether it's, how you're inspiring your community or that problem you're trying to solve for and raise awareness about. I help blank with blank. This is fundamentally the simplest formula that we can do to describe what we offer to our audience. And just like we said earlier, you can write down your 10, 15 people that you know that might be willing to listen to what you have to talk about. This is another thing that you can do today or tomorrow, right? You can identify that why statement. Who do I help and what do I help them with? And this is going to be infinitely valuable because now when you approach your website, landing page, or you're working with a designer and they're saying, what do you do? And you can't describe to the designer what you do. You can't describe to your,
it's always different.
Your contractor what you do.
Right.
This is going to put you in a good spot. You can thank us later. You're going to feel super confident working with your vendors, working with your ideal customers, family and friends that are saying, hey, you started that new business. What do you do? What is it that you do again? This is good. This will put you years ahead of so many other entrepreneurs that aren't listening to this podcast. Now. Christmas is the worst holiday because everyone's going to ask me, how's that business? Right? Like, what do you do? And they leave confused and, send you a grocery store gift card because they're a little worried. This is going to set you up for your marketing, right? We're building your brand because you know who you are working with and who you're targeting and what value you provide to them. You're building your brand here. Now you're starting to build the pillars of your personal brand business or any business for that matter. And these are the logs, right? You're starting to build this fire. You got your message, you got your brand, you got your marketing. This is that spot where you're starting to invest in some of these things, knowing that there's people that are interested in hearing about this. And this is likely going to be a viable thing to pursue.
Yeah, if you're listening along, you've been listening along this, Sean just tapped, that's a little bit of that core message, right? That like again, some of the best advice I ever got. I use this, it applies like all over the place. This is another one of the places that it applies. Learned it way back in when I was in grad school at seminary or whatever. And the guy said, a mist in the pulpit is a fog in the pew. Okay. A mist in the pulpit is a fog in the pew. The point of the analogy is if you're a little bit unclear on now, what do you do and who does it serve? And you're just a little fuzzy and you spin off a couple of different answers depending on, you said one thing to your aunt, you said another thing to that vendor you were, looking into about maybe helping design something or whatever. If you're a little fuzzy, then it's going to be much more challenging to gather that people around the fire because they're not sure. Like, wait, is this a signal fire? Are we staying here for the week? Is this supposed to actually warm us? I thought we had a hotel room or it's just confusing. So if you're a little bit confused on what Sean just said about your business, then your poor customer whomever it is you're trying to rally around this, man, like it's absolute dense fog for them. They have no idea. So I love that sequence. I love that kind of metaphor of the fire. You want to start that spark, and we said like that. You can do that today. When the podcast is over, 10 people, right? And see if you can get them interested and rally around that. Then we talked about building that fire, and now we're really trying to get this thing up and running by landing on that. Okay, well, make sure this is super clear for you, because that's going to shape how that brand gets developed, and it's going to help the right people start to rally around that. So, where does my website, logo, all the typical stuff most of us run to, and some for some it's because it's so heavily marketed to this audience. Like, don't worry about any of that. With blank, fill in the product, right? With blank website builder, you can have your thing up today. But they haven't done any of this work. So where do you put some of those kind of more familiar pieces? Like, well, Sean didn't say he does branding and websites and all that stuff. How come he didn't pitch that already? Where do you put that when you're thinking about helping folks build a brand in a business?
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of the stuff that we talked about is really helpful for those starting out, right? They're saying, hey, it's 2020 and I'm starting my first business and things, but there's a lot of businesses that have been around for years and years and may be profitable, may have systems in place, but they're not necessarily growing. And especially in this time, people are saying, hey, I have this business, but I don't have an audience. I don't have... Right. I don't have the social media followers of this business or that business. They've built a business, but they don't have an audience, right? And we know in 2020, having a engaged audience is one of the biggest assets that you can have as a business. And that's only done through kind of what we're talking about now, right? Being really clear around who we want to reach, being really clear about that value that we provide for them, and having a lot of this understanding up front so that when you build your website, which 2020, if you don't have a website at this point, like we're not saying you're off the hook. Right. An essential piece of building your business and your brand. Sure. But what we've just talked about is going to be infinitely valuable when you're building that website, launching your social media accounts and doing all of these things. And, related to the analogy, I went to a family, car camping type, thing a couple years ago. And I remember, the fire was being built and I see my, a relative, my relative of my wife come out and get like the gasoline and the like flame blower thing, right? And he is dumping all of this gasoline on this fire.
Oh boy.
And fanning the flame, right? Like we're talking about. And Eagle Scout Sean this is heresy right here. Yes. This is not how we do things. Right. This is against the Adirondack Code of Ethics.
Correct.
And so I'm watching this thing happen, thinking, maybe this isn't where I step in. Like, don't want to create some
because this is on the wife side, right?
Wife side. Yeah. I'm gonna watch things and see how things roll out. And 15 minutes go by, and he had one big thing going up with his gasoline. Ran out of gasoline. We also ran out of fire because he was building this thing the wrong way. And this is where I see a lot of people when they're either starting their businesses or they've had a business for 2 decades, right? Yeah. And they bring out the gasoline, i.e. wallet. Yeah. And they're just throwing money at this thing saying, hey, money equals people, and they see it and they see impressions, and we have the Facebook ads running. And I've invested the money into the business, but once the money rolls away and is all spent, then you're not seeing the effects of that revenue that you've invested in your business. Right. So everything that we just talked about are some organic ways where you're spending very little, maybe even no money to get your first audience built. And now you've validated your idea. This is something worth pursuing. People are interested. You've kind of built up your your brand around it, your website and things are in place. And now this is where you can really fan the flame, right? This is where you can do a few things. You can, identify some really happy customers and get their testimonials. You can start building stories around your business and brand and the happy customers that you have served. And that's going to be some of your best marketing, right? You've invested months of time and energy into making your customers happy. Let's leverage that.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy those testimonials, right?
Right.
You're getting social proof. You're getting credibility now. And now if you want to pull out your wallet and invest some money into Facebook advertising, some other ways to generate some attention and awareness, some partnerships, all these kinds of things. And now you're investing that money into something that is already proven. It's already going somewhere and you're just amplifying it. If you have your signal fire and hey, some people are starting to bring attention, but we want a healthy, tall fire that's going to really create some change around the people that see it. If you're building your wood stove, you're providing a service for people and you're investing some money into that because we need this fire to keep going because we want to continue providing for the people that need our service. And you're on the campfire and you want people and more people to be around your campfire, that you're going to need some, a nice healthy fire around that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. And so if you're listening, this obviously makes sense in the concept of like, this is helpful. I'm thinking about starting something and that lays things out. But I want to make sure you hear Sean and I say, if you're a business that's been around for, 6 years, 10 years even, Sean and I literally worked together with a business not too long ago than the last year, profitable, doing really well in a like tech science space, well above what Sean and I understood as far as the complexities of what they did for a business, but they really didn't have a lot of these answers in place. They struggled in some areas and it was really holding them back. So this applies whether you're, hey, I'm looking to start this thing, start this nonprofit, start this business, start this personal brand, or hey, I have a company, we're 15 employees strong. We're, closing in on $750,000 revenue, but we don't have the answers to those questions. Would I pick the phone up and call Sean? Would this still help? Would this apply to me? And the answer is 1000% yes, right? It's no different. It's no different. That's still the way you build a fire. And those are still the three kinds of fires and kind of the purposes they serve, whether you're starting out or whether you go, I think we need to go restoke the fire. Okay. So where can people find out more about Sean Pritzkau online? Where can they connect?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my website is seanpritzkau.com.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Robbie will have that in the show notes for you because not everyone spells that right. I think we'll probably have like a 25% success rate of spelling my name right. seanpritzkau.com. I send out weekly emails and videos related to marketing and branding, especially for people that find themselves in this space. I'm on social media. Mostly active on Instagram and Twitter at Sean Pritzkau. Family might see me on Facebook, but I'm on there as well. So yeah.
Okay. And we'll throw all of that in the show notes for sure so that you can connect with Sean and check out a lot of the great things he does. And we work together often. And I imagine he will be frequently on the podcast because I just enjoy being around him. As always, thanks so much for hanging out with me on the Brand Ed podcast. I hope that was really helpful for you. I know I took a lot away from it. It always helps me to just talk with another friend who's doing this same thing to say, where am I in my own business and what do I need to do next? So make sure you check out the show notes. I'll have links in there for how you can connect with Sean. Go follow him on social. He's just a fantastic person and a wealth of information. And like I said, we'll probably have him back on the podcast soon because I just learned so much from him and love kind of being able to do life with him and work together with him. If you know someone who's trying to start a business or whatever, remember, go share this podcast episode with them. You can just push that little share button on the top of your phone and whatever podcast app you're in and share it with them right now. And that's a great way to get this into the hands of more people. Now, until next time, I want you to have a great week and go and build a life-giving brand.